Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sean Balla, the VP of Product Management at Causeview, and I'm really excited to present our product roadmap and introduce our new Impact Form engine. Today, we're going to go over the following agenda items. We'll start by reviewing the feedback we've obtained from our recent client survey, and we'll highlight some of the upcoming product enhancements and features planned on our roadmap. Next, we will share an overview and demo of Causeview Impact, our new form engine, and we'll wrap up by looking at some of the planned improvements for Causeview events. We recently conducted a client survey where we asked you about your likelihood of recommending us to your friends and colleagues. As well, we asked you about areas of improvement. We really appreciated everyone's feedback and participation. In case you didn't get a chance to complete the survey this time, we will be sending them out more regularly moving forward. From the recent survey, 4 areas to work on were identified. First, we agree that client communication and transparency can be improved. We want to be more open with you about the features and enhancements we are working on in the background to improve your overall user experience. We plan to schedule more webinars like this to keep you in the loop about how Causeview is continuously evolving our product to meet your changing needs. Given these upcoming enhancements, we want to provide more training so that you can get the most out of Causeview. We appreciate all your feedback on our online forums over the years and in our recent survey. We made a lot of effort to incorporate your great suggestions when developing Causeview Impact. We understand that you enjoy creating online forums through Action Page Designer, but there are also some limitations on the level of customization and what you could control and see. The new Causeview Impact Form engine includes much more self-service capabilities and back-end management. We're excited to show you more in a few minutes. Another area many of you brought up was the year-end job to issue consolidated receipts. We intend to revise this process and bring more proactive assistance to you to ensure you can develop your receipts and deliver them to your donors in a timely manner. With events, since a lot of you execute various types of fundraising events for your organizations, we want to give you more flexibility and control in setting up your events and event registration forms. We'll be discussing this further towards the end of the presentation. Here's our current product roadmap over the coming quarters. Please keep in mind that this is subject to change and any decisions should be made based on the product and service as is. In Q4 of 2017, we launched our Easy Debit integration for Causeview fundraising. In Q1 of this year, we launched a pilot for our Impact Form Designer. In Q2, we launched our Causeview Advancement product, which brings the fundraising and donation management capabilities on the Salesforce Higher Education Data Architecture, HEDA. We also launched support for GDPR, the General Data Privacy Regulation. In Q3, we've already rolled out a revision of UK Direct Debit. We're in the process of launching support for a new global payment gateway option, SafeSave. We will also be launching new events functionality, which we'll discuss more. Lastly, within fundraising, in line with your feedback, we are updating our consolidated receipting to assist in your year-end activities. In Q4, the plan is to bring the Pledge Manager functionalities we launched for Causeview Advancement to Causeview Fundraising and look at our other soft crediting concepts like giving circles. In the first half of 2019, the plan is to bring multi-currency support to Impact donation forms and allow payment processing against Easy Debit through Impact. At this time, we're proud to introduce Causeview Impact, which is our new form engine that lets you create custom, responsive online donation forms. The forms you create with Causeview Impact will automatically adjust to the size of the user's screen, whether it's a smartphone, tablet, or desktop. You can customize the back-end functionality of the form and manage the data mapping and allocations. It has a user-friendly drag-and-drop interface so you can build your own forms without requiring any technical or coding skills. It's seamlessly integrated with your payment gateway and your Causeview instance, so all data will automatically be written back to Causeview and your payment can be processed instantly. You will also be able to view each form submission, whether it's failed or successful. This will help you with both reconciliation and any troubleshooting. You also get comprehensive form management by having access to every version of the saved form. Any changes made to the form will automatically appear on the web page the form is embedded on. So I'm going to jump right in. And so this is our Impact homepage. I'm going to go at a fairly fast clip and just show you a bunch of highlights. I'm going to go in and go through a few different forms and give you a bunch of different examples of what we're looking at here. Let me start. I've got one form here. This is just a simple stock form. Let me just toggle this, and I'm going to take this into a bit of a preview mode here so you can take a look what it looks like. The forms, as I mentioned, are fully responsive. We're following web accessibility standards. Forms can still be embedded on your website, but we're also using a new method to make it easier and more mobile friendly. We can go through and take a look. You get the same functionality we had before in terms of the amount of buttons. I'm going to talk to those in a minute. We've got conditional visibility here to allow you to do things like recurring gifts. And then I'm going to take a look at also just what we can add on to the form and how easy that can be. I'm going to do a quick submission right here and just show you a little bit of what that process looks like. And so one large piece or one benefit for us internally also is just in terms of when we're going through the design process, we can run through these kinds of test submissions without creating any data, but we can also view all the entities that were created within your submission. And so again, building on the idea of transparency, that you can access this information and you can share it very quickly. When I go through here, let me switch back into our design mode, and I just want to show you a little bit. Again, we're not going to go through this in a sort of training idea, but we have the idea of control sections and pre-built sections here, and you can just drag these items in. And as you highlight or select an item or a line or a section of items, you can modify controls on that. So I can take a look here and adjust details. I can adjust things very quickly. And again, having this in almost a what you see is what you get interface, however, giving you the ability to drag and drop and rearrange items as you see fit. So let's say for some things that are just fundraising focused here, so within our payment section here, I'd like to add in another field. So we've got some very fundraising specific fields. So I've got the processing fee here, and I'll just add that in here. And I can put in some language to say, okay, I would like to cover the processing fee. I can arrange that. You can also adjust the processing fee for whatever reason if you'd like to do it that way. And you can adjust it. We've defaulted that to 3%, but you can change that. And so within the forms, again, you can make these simple ones very easily. Let's say if we want to go up here and take a look, another function that a lot of customers like is the idea of a minimum donation amount. And so I can take now what we use and what we call that a validation rule. So I'm just going to take the other amount and I'm going to say, let's make the number greater than or equal to, and now it's going to put a validation value there. Let's put $4. Let's say, I'm going to say a validation value of not 5. And now I can just close that. So if we save this, I'm going to go into toggle preview here. I'll just put that as $3. And let me see as I go in,
I click that, you'll get the error, and you can customize that error as well in terms of the validation error. But just trying to be fundraising focused and building those tools out for you guys. Let's take a look at how we map in a field here. So we've got a number of fields already mapped by default, similar to what you'd see in a normal donation page, and we've got standard donation pages. But let's say you'd like to capture some additional information, and so if you want someone to subscribe to the newsletter, I think I don't have that already here. Oh, I do have that. Let's see. Well, I can put in a checkbox in here. Oops, drag that, not right. And so now what we can do here is, so you can put the value in, but you can also then go and now you want to map this field to say, I would like to know more about planned giving. So let me go find a field there. And within here, I'm going to say, okay, well, on the contact record, that's probably where we want to track it. Frankly, I don't know if I have a planned giving field. Yes. So I have that bequest field. And so if someone's interested in the bequest now, I can map that. I can save this mapping. And what you'll see here is on that contact field, you can see where it's actually going to get mapped. If you wanted to map that to multiple places in terms of on a transaction and a contact, for example, you could do that as well. You can map single fields to multiple places. If we want to go take a look, let me take a look before. I'll show you another form, but before that, let me show you just around some of the general settings we've got available. And again, some of these are directly related to a lot of requests we've had from customers over the years. Just defining basic things like the allocations. So for example, right now we have our form designated to go to general donations in the operating fund. However, let's say I want to apply a bit of a levy to any gift that comes through, and I want to add an allocation here. And say, yep, this is coming from general donations. However, I'm going to apply 3% to our admin fund to go to operating costs. And so now every gift that comes through can automatically get a small 3% allocation will go in along with recurring gifts or anything, and that way you don't have to make those sort of adjustments on an annual or a monthly basis. So let's talk about the branding and theme, which is always a popular topic. So previously we did have something where customers would provide a CSS file they had to share themselves. Now what we can do is apply a CSS theme, and we have the idea of CSS themes here. So if I want to take a look here, and I've got an extra theme here that I can apply, and so, well, I've got the text branded, the fonts that I want to use and embed to kind of copy what I've got existing, or if I want something a little subtler, I can go to something else, but you can apply that, change the button styles, change many properties in terms of the background colors. So the ability to adjust that granularity is there. I'll show you in a second where you can adjust those themes. And again, that's accessible in its own editor there. Google Analytics is also a very popular concept where people want to track everything. And so instead of a customization or embedding script on the embedding page, we can put it in the tracking ID. And then what we do right now is we make 2 calls out on the tracking ID. So when the page loads and when the page submits, we send a call out to your Google Analytics. A couple other things that are there. You have the success URL similar to our old action pages. So you can redirect folks and share information with them. Also, you can define the merchant account, which is something that couldn't be done previously, where it used to have to come through us when you wanted to take a form offline or use testing on it. Now, while you're building a form, you can definitely use that test account, and then you can switch it back to the default when you're ready to proceed and when you're ready to take that form live and process payments against it. And lastly, I'll just touch on real quick is just on the messages here. And this is in terms of localization. We've done this with a couple of our pilot customers already in terms of adjusting different messages. This can be done again into localized error messages, failures, text alerts. As you can imagine here, as I close this one, all these labels can be localized right away in terms of the lists and the amounts. I'm going to talk about our data lists in a second and how those can be adjusted, but all these fields can easily be adjusted to any different your different languages. So let me talk quickly about our concept called data lists. And the data list is meant to represent any type of list that would be, I guess, represented on a form as a drop-down list. So if we look here at our frequency, for example, is a type of list, and we can look here at our data list. So we can edit that here in our editor, and you can see, okay, so this form supports these frequencies. We can adjust that if we don't want to. We don't want to support that. We can do that. We can save this data list. And I'm just going to clone this to say recurring frequency. We have the idea, and we talked about build once, apply anywhere. Once we have this, we can apply this list in multiple places. So the idea that we build this list and maintain it, then we can now change it and apply it on multiple forms at once. And so if I want to take a look here and say, well, what are my other types of frequencies? I can go through and find the different types of frequencies or different lists. And these are all the different lists that I've got in this demo account right now. And the concept of lists is one that we have separate to the form. So as I'll come out of this form in particular and come back into Impact. And let me take a look here and I'll show you. So here we have a whole set of different lists available. Again, we're not going to do a lot of, wouldn't expect you to memorize these steps, but just to expose you to kind of what's available. We're going to have here with properties, so we can look at a specific list. So if you think about ACH gifts, we have a list here of the different types of accounts that an ACH gift would have: personal checking, savings, business checking and savings. You can adjust this list as you see fit as well. Now, a different type of list is coming into our active campaigns. So if we look here, this type of list has the appeal ID for our Salesforce our Salesforce appeals. And we've also got a third ID, which is our default fund if we want to pull down some additional information here. Now, what's different about this is that you'll see a refresh items list. And this refresh items is referring to the idea, move this out of my way, sorry. This refresh items is referring to the idea that this is pulling data directly from your Causeview instance. So once we enable Impact on your instance, we can define a number of different queries, and we can assign a query to a specific data list. So this data list is pulling, I believe, all active appeals without a net. I'm going to try and refresh this. And so there aren't any other new active appeals here, but we can set the defaults on the particular pick list, and then any drop-down list in a form that uses this data list would default to Annual Appeal 2016. Similarly, if we look here at funds, we have the all funds list, and I'll just show you those are the properties. But if we look at the items in here, we have the expansion fund, operating fund, and admin fund. So the admin fund was something I just added in today, but we can save that data list. But if I come back in, this is connected to a query where you can see we've got a refresh there. And so when I refresh this item, I can see, okay, the admin fund is there. There's the Salesforce ID, so we know what to map in when someone selects the admin fund. So the data lists we feel are a very powerful addition. It's something that, again, you don't have to be updating your forms and republishing and maintaining multiple forms to just update one item. You just have to update that data list, refresh it, and you're good to go. Let's take a look now at some of the back end here, where a lot of has been a bit of a black box in the past, and now we're exposing out the idea of sharing submissions. So as users, you can access and you can view submissions, which it's kind of just starting out right now, but we're giving you the ability to see different submissions that are happening. This is everything that's happening on my demo account here. You can see all the forms that were successful. I've been doing a lot of playing around. So you see a lot of forms that have errors on them, but you can see what those errors are to a point where we can take a look here and see, okay, I've got an error here where something is not a valid Salesforce ID. I can further look through this detail into things like traces. I can look into traces, get the exact IDs and the response that comes back from the gateway, the response that comes back from Salesforce. We get the IDs and capture it. In case you're wondering, no, we don't capture credit card details or any sensitive information like that. We have been following the developments around GDPR, and we are following those processes as well in terms of the ability to not store personally identifiable data in here as well. So within here, you have a lot of much more data than you would have had before. We can see different forms that you have, so you can now filter by the form on your account. You can also filter at what status or what endpoint or how far the form got. Some of these are still in a little bit of refinement that we're adjusting and making it a little less technical and more accessible for you guys. But things like seeing all the entities that were created. So if we look at a specific submission here, I can take a look and see, okay, this is the transaction ID I got back from the payment gateway. This is the contact date record that was created. Here's the gift, payment, and allocations. So all that information is there. If you guys are building your own forms, the ability for you to do that troubleshooting, and frankly, even for us to help troubleshoot better on the support side is a lot easier. So I'm going to take a look, let me go and jump in and take a look at another form here. I want to show you, actually, I'm going to take a look and show you a page. And so something that's just coming out now is our Pages interface. And our Pages interface, we know a lot of you did love to use action pages and to spin up a page without needing a web developer. We're providing a more control around it as well, and just better pages, more contemporary designs, multiple page layouts, and definitely more to come with this. So I can show you right now what the page designer looks like, and what you can do is, I've got a vertical layout right now. We've got a number of different layouts that you can choose. Frankly, I kind of like the vertical best. I can go in here and adjust my image. I can put a header image and adjust and center it as I like. I can select from a library existing. If I want to preview this right now, I can also see the mobile view of this page, so I can quickly see what this looks like. I've also got this open here. Now, this page is a UK form. The main difference here is that we've also got the ability to do UK direct debit, and again, in a mobile format. I can put in account number, sort code, and we can send this off, verify it, and it's in a much more streamlined approach than what was formerly available for UK direct debit. You don't have your donor jumping around to different places. We think it's a much cleaner approach from before. And again, you can apply the similar branding. So if this were to be on your website, we could apply your branding colors to these, to the button items, to the submission button and whatnot. And from here, you can select also your own themes and apply that. So as your page, even if you weren't applying it on the embed on the impact page, if the impact page itself had its own standalone branding, you can do that as well. So lastly, I want to show you one more form with a little bit more complex functionality, but again, to show you kind of what's available on the Action Page Designer and what you'll be able to do. One piece of functionality we've had a lot of customers ask about is the idea of the recurring donation and the ability to switch amounts on recurring donations, where I have a matrix of 10, 20, 25, 50, and 100 for a single gift. However, when I want to change that, I'd like to be able to do that we can now make more realistic or different amounts. So the recurring amount here would now change when I select and I want to make a recurring donation. I can now make amounts of 5, 10, 15, 25, and 40. And so just based on that, I'm updating this to create new fields. Also, these fields, my recurring information now appears. So having that, to be able to do that within the designer, we're not asking you to write any JavaScript or anything like that, which is somewhat how it was done in the past, which was a bit of a maintenance headache. And now you can do that under your own control, and the ability for you to do this with multiple data lists, to have different amount matrices, and then test and A/B test different forms in multiple scenarios and see what your response rates are. Let me go back. I'm going to jump back into the slide here. So some of the new things that are going to be coming that we're working on actively on Impact specifically are around event registrations. Right now, things like our form processing is not, everything is going through the gateway, but we are going to go into non-processing forms. So if you think about those of you that are using volunteer forms or just contact or subscription forms, newsletter subscriptions, those will be possible. So you'll have the same capability to build rich custom forms yourselves. The idea of donation splitting is something a number of customers have implemented either through staging pages or through some customized script with us to allow donors to now make the decision to split out their gifts across multiple funds. And so we're working on that right now. And the key there is just to make it into a simple, easy to use format that people can access. The multi-currency I mentioned earlier, and that's where here is the multiple merchant account support for organizations that might be federated, or if you have multiple organizations operating under the same instance, you may have the need to allow someone to select which organization or which affiliate they're supporting, and the ability for you to select that and then for us to process on the donor selected merchant account will be coming soon. So let's talk about events for a little bit right now. So events, we've offered Causeview events within fundraising for a while now. We've had some limitations around SQL query limits, which relate back to roll-ups or the number of customizations that might exist in your org. So registration limits, which should have been around 10, and even we got a lot of feedback that 10 was not enough. There were issues with organizational registrations as well. So the ability for an organization to buy a ticket and to buy a number of tickets without being assigned a specific contact wasn't a strong point for us, and we had to apply some workarounds or customizations on forms to make that work. At-event payment processing has been something that many customers have looked for, instead of having to use third-party tools or like an app on their phone to process payments and then load that data back in and match it back to constituents. The ability to do it against existing registrations for donors at an event and being able to get, again, a 360 view of that donor to say, yes, they purchased this ticket, they made this donation, and they bought a number of raffle tickets, or they took home an auction item, and to be able to have all that payment processing without having a few days of effort to load that data and make it and sync it all up. Lastly, the big one is guest management. So guest management for us on the free event side has been handled one way, and on the paid event side was handled another way, where you could enter in guests on a free event, you could enter them in immediately and we'd create those. But on a paid event, the way we were doing it, you would enter that information afterwards and you get an email after the fact to let you know how many guests you had to enter. And you would only sort of have one kick at the can to enter your guests as the primary registrant. And so that was definitely a pain point many folks have highlighted to us. So what we're looking at now with our next release is going to be its own separate package. And so that will sit on top of fundraising. But what we're doing is decoupling a bit of the event registration and the contact. And the idea is that you don't need to necessarily know. And a lot of people are telling us that when they get their event registrations, or when someone registers for an event, they may buy 5 tickets. They don't necessarily know who the 5 people or 10 people are coming with them. So we are creating tickets for the contacts and the accounts, but we're not tightly coupling them. So it's okay for you to know that, but you could see that Anish Bala has bought 10 tickets, but he hasn't filled those out yet, but you know how many he has outstanding, and then you can also see what your capacity is. We will be linking registration purchases to opportunities or transactions. And again, the ability to be a little more flexible in how we process the purchases. Organizational event registrations, where we will then tie that event purchase back to an account or an organization. Instead of having to always have a main or primary contact, we'll still have the idea of a coordinator or someone who is in charge of distributing and communicating around the tickets, but the idea that the hard credits and the organization is the one that's made the purchase for that paid event. And I'd slide here for just completing tickets at time of purchase. So entering your tickets before and after. So the idea that when I make my purchase, we're going to know how many tickets you've been allotted. And if you have that information, great, you can submit that now. If you don't have that information, that's okay. We'll provide a link that you can share that. And as we get that information, we'll communicate that back with your attendees to be able to say, here's your QR code, here's your information. And if you can't attend, then here's the link to click and update it yourself. So making it more self-service, not only for the primary registrant, but also their attendees. And so this is what we're thinking about to address some of the bigger concerns that people have communicated to us. We'll also, this will be within the scope of impact, so you will be able to use our registration forms, and part of our registration forms will also have optional donations, so you can purchase tickets or not purchase tickets and make an optional donation in lieu of attending or in addition to attending. Let's see. All right, so we're at that time to take a look and talk about some questions and see how, if there were any questions that folks had from the chat. Got one question here around modifying CSS, and maybe that came in early, but it was just, yes, you will have the ability to modify CSS, and there is a interface within Impact to update your CSS. Now, it may take a little bit of changes if you have an existing CSS, because all the classes and the pages are different than your initial action page, but we've greatly simplified that and streamlined the object model because of the web accessibility standards.
Action page is still going to be available for events with the new options.
So our action page is going to be available with events, and that's, yes, we will be rolling that out. As part of our launch right now, we're not supporting events, but absolutely we know that's something that we want to deliver very soon. And so you will be able to build registration pages using the Impact Form Designer.
Another question is, where does peer-to-peer capability sit?
So we're not looking at peer-to-peer capabilities. I think maybe we can follow up on that and discuss that further, but that's not something we're immediately focused on, but it does potentially look to that. So we've got a question around impact forms allowing customizations of autoresponders. We may need to follow up on that. So there's another question about gift aid and GDPR. So I think I'd mentioned earlier that we are following GDPR, but the ability for the forms, we do have a pre-built section around customizing GDPR communication preferences. And we do have gift aid that you'd just be able to write to gift aid and create a gift aid declaration if necessary. There's a question just around events and sponsorship levels and benefits. So we are going to have a follow-up chat around events. And so I think as part of a follow-up to this session, we will share a sign-up where folks can express if they'd like to take part in potentially reviewing prototypes in a beta for events. We can definitely, I'd be happy to share that with you guys. And the idea of what we're looking at for sponsorship levels or ticket types, we will have those, conceptually, we have prototypes around that we can discuss. The question around customizing the gift matrix to be personalized based on the donor's last gift. That's a great question. So we have the ability to do that through a form right now in our action engine. And I believe that's something that we do have coming on the roadmap as well, where you can already pre-populate a single amount. So if you had something that you could populate the other amount, and you could populate fields in terms of first name, last name, email in a form directly through the URL. So you can provide someone with a shortened URL, which would go to the form. And we are looking at the idea of how you could have like a custom data list. Essentially what you'd want maybe is to say that a donor gave you $25 as their last gift. So you send them a link, and then that link would now contain the fact that it would maybe have the minimum amount as 25, and it would increment by maybe $5 or $10 increments based on their last gift. That's a great question. So that is something we're looking at soon. The question on the recurring gift checkbox to make it stand out more. Absolutely. So that's something that you can adjust the style on that. We can adjust the font on just that. I think in some of the pilots we did look at just putting a button and using that as a button matrix, so you'd have one time versus recurring, so the donor can select that. And so that's definitely something you could do for a custom form. The follow-up there was, can you make a recurring gift a default? Absolutely. So you could make that a default. You could also put that in the URL as well to pre-populate that in certain instances where you could, based on passing a parameter in the URL, you could make the form default to recurring gift. Just one point of caution, sometimes I think that goes really well with your question about making the recurring GIF more noticeable, because we've had times in the past where folks have defaulted to recurring GIFs and experienced some backlash because people didn't understand that they were making a recurring GIF. So those two, defaulting it but making it more prominent, kind of go hand in hand. So I think that's about it on the question side. I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. I hope you're excited about what you've seen today. We'll be following up this session around a few things for how to get started with Impact, what we're going to be doing on the training front to enable you guys, what the process will be. We'll share recording and instructions, and the schedule for more detailed training around Causeview Impact and also Causeview events. And if you're interested in contributing or being part of an advanced group, we'd be really excited to get your feedback. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.